What's going on, everyone? This is Mark here with Anastacio and Union Martial Arts, bringing you guys another solo video. I promised you guys that I would do more, especially for those that don't have a training partner, and I think this is super beneficial across the boards and really kind of the icing on the cake to Anastacio Kali's biggest project to date, which is Elite Access. I will talk about that towards the end of the video. Let's jump right into it. So, it's going to be a single knife, or what we call barao in our system. It's going to be with a training module. So this is just my Century Wave Master that I've done in the past. I just took off the actual padding that goes around it. So this is the base here. And then I took one of my padded sticks. It doesn't have to be padded. It could be a live stick. And literally I just taped it in an angle 1 format. So that's more like a diagonal line here. And that's supposed to simulate that particular strike. It could go on either side, but I put it on the right side just to give it a little bit more of a spatial relation to an angle 1 from a right hand. So obviously, guys, I know you guys may not have a Wave Master or a particular punching bag that is just like this. I just did this because it's a thinner base. You could technically tape it around your actual bag. You could tape it to a tree, a pole, anything that you don't mind kind of taping around it and working with what you have, of course. This would ultimately be the full product with a partner, but in this case, we don't have the partner, so keeping safe while we're training. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at dissecting the line, and you could essentially do this for a stick against stick concept, knife against stick, empty hand against stick, but I'm going to represent this as someone's actual arm, and then the blade can just be attached here, or use your imagination for that part. But it's going to be knife against knife. So when we look at dissecting the line, one of the biggest similarities is, of course, the angle. You're still using an angle 1 versus an angle 1. Doesn't always have to be like that, but it's something that we can build off of from our single stick concepts. The difference is, of course, you can't attack the knife with your own knife. You're not ever going to be in a confrontation where you use the actual knife and then both knives kind of butt heads here and then we're kind of just jamming each other's knife like that. Maybe in the movies, maybe in animation, but not in the reality of things. So when we look at single knife work, we especially pay attention to the principle, which is my strike is my block and my block is my strike. And the way that we portray it in this particular drill that I'm going to show you guys is that my block with my knife is going to be a cut. It's actually going to be a slash. So by dissecting this angle 1, I'm looking to cut further along down the arms, really anywhere I can. There's obviously different vitals I can hope to aim for, but we're not going to worry too much about accuracy and specifics right now as to where we're aiming. But anyways, I'm going to be looking to cut that line because we look at a concept that's called defanging the snake, and while you may not cut off the actual fang, while you may not cause severe damage, you're going to be able to hack away at it or at least transition into a better position to control. And that's kind of the idea that was brought down from Grand Maestro John Baez, whose system Anastacio Kali stems from. Is one thing he's always ingrained in us is that you should always move with purpose. So if I'm going to have the knife in my hand, I'm going to use it. That doesn't necessarily mean I have to kill with it. That doesn't necessarily mean I have to go crazy with it. But if I'm going to approach or attempt to preserve my life in this particular direction, and I have to pass the knife because I understand the attributes and the intent of my opponent when they're swinging, then I'm not just going to safety hand it if I have the opportunity to dissect the line at the same time. Right? And that's just one of the variations. So, angle 1 against angle 1, we're going to cut a little bit lower down, let's say about halfway. When I do this angle 1, one of the important things that we want to look at with a knife as well is weapon retention, because a lot of our basic angles become compressed. I have no need to stretch out my arm all the way out here. That'll give another line for my opponent to dissect. Right? Because like I said, we're not going to go knife against knife. We're looking at each other's arms, the limbs, because the weapon is just an extension of our hand. So we're going to cut down a little bit more on the sensitive sides here and not up here. So to retain my weapon, when I cut this angle 1, right, I want to make sure that I'm not going out away from my body. I'm twisting and driving with my hip and shoulder, getting about a natural extension, which is pretty much, I would say, 60 to 65%. And as I create the contact, I'm going to drive back, right? Because I don't always necessarily have to go through. I can run forward or run backwards depending on the sharpness of the blade. Will determine the effectiveness, but I can run the blade because it's an edged weapon and it's meant to cut not slap or whack. So as I give that angle 1, I twist, right? I take my safety hand, my hand always over, not under. Okay, so I'm going over, I'm cutting, I'm drawing back into my body. Now alternatively, you can also use like a V pattern footwork here where you can switch off. Okay, but we're not going to worry too much about that particular footwork right now. So the first step is angle 1 against angle 1. We draw, twist, hip and shoulder, and pull back. So a good thing is a scissor motion. I'm going to try to parry this as I cut. Okay, now to be honest guys, if it really comes down to it, this is more important than the cut. I'll always have another opportunity to use it. But the more I can ingrain this motion together while focusing on my position, the better. Okay, so that's all it is. Very, very simple. Okay, now this is the point in time where we have to look at the footwork because we're going to look at a continuation. This is not the be all and end all. Again, I'm not going to be able to chop someone's arm off. I'm not going to be able, that probably won't make someone stop, but it's going to get me to the next position. So now we look on the footwork a little bit. I'm going to take a left step with my left foot, 45 degrees as I deliver this angle 1 gunting. So as I do that, I end up on the outside of the body, this being the inside of the arm. So now I've transitioned outside here. I've drawn this knife back in. Now what I want to do from here is I'm going to drive with my opposite, so my left shoulder and my left hip. I'm going to twist my body and give an angle 2. I'm going to dissect the line on the outside. And instead of parrying it, which is a possibility, I'm just going to stretch my left hand and watch how I draw this knife back to my hip. Okay? Hip is just a rough image. It could be anywhere along here, but it comes back to my body in a nice tight motion. I'm cutting and pulling back, and then I'm checking. So from here is maybe where I start to draw. Maybe I chamber my knife and go to something more controlling. I switch my weapons, or maybe from here I decide if I can push or if I parry it down and start attacking or controlling from there. Okay, so once again, starting off from the initial position, we have that angle 1 with that 45 step to the left. We cut, we pull it back, driving with my hips and my shoulders. Angle 2, notice my body turning, and I check with my left hand, making sure that there's a weapon retention here as well. Okay, so with that being said, the possibilities after that are pretty limitless, but we also want to do a little bit more with the situation that we have right now. Now, to me, doing a Sinawali or a Carenza or like a free-flowing strike is probably the easiest part. It's probably the most creative part as well, but we've created this particularly in a position that we have to think in this specific scenario. So yes, I could technically come here, and then cut and go crazy with my knife, but will all those land? Will all those be effective? Are all of those necessary? Those are things that you should consider when you are practicing on a bag. You don't want it just to be reps and reps and reps. You want to give a little bit more quality to those reps as well. So with that in mind, we're going to take this and just add in a quick follow-up, and that's going to really bring out the knife's attributes so that we can, again, separate the difference between using this module for a stick application and versus a knife application, even though, again, we're playing with the same fundamental angles. So we're going to break it up in between the angle 1 and the angle 2, and it's going to complement it because it does not have to change our position. All I'm going to do is after that angle 1 with the step, when I chamber this strike, you can chamber it straight down, okay? But I'm going to actually chamber it towards my left hip. And the way that I chamber it is I pull it back and I make sure the blade still points towards my opponent. So this is where you would find something like a reverse stab. Reverse stab can be going high line, mid line, a little bit of low line if you really wanted to. Or, as I do that, I can thrust going backwards this way to set up another angle 1 if the position were to change. But for now, it's just a simple thrust. So, as I step here, I give a reverse stab, and as I do this thrust, I can either work from here and turn, again, using my hip and shoulder to drive into the angle 2 and check, or I can draw it back to my body, and then from here, give a more compact angle 2. Okay, so now that I'm in that angle 2, I've delivered my check. My weapon is retained. I'm in a position to do a round stab. So this can go midline, it can go a little bit more low line. I can even get it more high line depending on how I react with this arm. Whether I push it in, I'm probably going midline. If I push it down or I parry it down, then I might be able to go high line. Okay? So we're just doing what we call the stab to slash method, but we're just reversing it now. So we're going slash to stab. And that's one of the more important things because you can do a thrusting motion in both stick and knife or sword, so impact and edge. But obviously the biggest difference, unless your stick is super sharp like a wooden spear, it's not going to puncture. So we're going to take that attribute and let it shine by incorporating it into this very basic situation. But at least we can get our reps in a little bit more educated as opposed to just going in front of a bag and just slashing away like crazy. You can also do this in pakal grip, so very quickly I'm just going to show you how it's done. It's pretty much the same thing. Leading with my thumb here, I step. I can follow up with that thrust, right? From here I can turn, or I can draw it back. I'm going to cut down leading with my thumb. I check, round stab here, round stab on top, round stab low line, depending on what you want. Okay, so you can play with both of those at the same time. You can take it one at a time, whatever it is you guys want to do. Something very, very basic, and something you guys can do even if you have to social distance, if you don't have a training partner. If you got tape, if you got a stick, be creative with this guy right here. If you have all of these things or something even better, there you go. So hope you guys enjoyed that video. As I said earlier, Elite Access is coming out this summer. I'm aiming for June 18th. That's when our June cycle comes out for our online lessons. And basically, it's going to be the biggest experience, one of our biggest projects in Anastacio Kali. I spoke about it in the Q&A that has been posted a couple days ago, so check that out. Information is down in the description box as well. The quick preview on what's included, the FAQs that you might have any questions about Anastacio Kali and our online memberships. So definitely check that out, guys. It's going to be limited to 10 students to start, and I really want to give all my attention and all my effort to that. So like this video, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Let's get this channel to 60K subs this year. Help me make that milestone come true, and I'll keep dishing out some great content for you guys. And until next time, catch you guys then.